Welcome to the channel, The Coin Merchant, where we uncover the hidden fortunes that might be sitting right in your pocket. And today we're diving into a story so incredible that it'll make you check every single penny you've ever touched. Because what if I told you that a simple 1-cent coin from 1982, something you might have spent on candy or tossed into a fountain without a second thought, could actually be worth a staggering $19 million? Yes, you heard that right, $19 million for a penny. And before you think this is some kind of fairy tale, let me assure you that this is absolutely real, and by the end of this video, you'll understand exactly why this particular Lincoln penny has become one of the most sought-after treasures in the entire numismatic world. But here's the thing, we're not stopping there, because after we explore this 1982 marvel, I've got two more pennies to share with you that are going to blow your mind even further, one from the early 90s that has collectors in an absolute frenzy, and another from 2009 that broke records in ways nobody expected. So make sure you stick around until the very end, because the values only get more shocking as we go, and trust me, you don't want to miss what's coming next. Now, let's talk about this 1982 Lincoln penny and why it commands such an astronomical price tag of up to $19 million at auction, making it one of the most valuable error coins ever discovered in United States history. And to understand why this coin is so incredibly special, we need to rewind the clock and look at what was happening at the United States Mint during the pivotal year of 1982, because this was a year of massive transition, a year when everything about the penny was about to change forever. You see, before 1982, pennies were made primarily of copper, giving them that distinctive reddish-brown appearance and a solid, hefty feel in your hand. But by the early 80s, copper prices had skyrocketed to the point where it was actually costing the government more than 1 cent to produce a single penny, which obviously made no economic sense whatsoever. So the US Mint made a revolutionary decision to switch from a 95% copper composition to a zinc core plated with a thin layer of copper, effectively creating a lighter, cheaper penny that would save the government millions of dollars in production costs over time. Here's where things get absolutely fascinating, and where the potential for error coins explodes into existence, because 1982 was the only year in American history where both types of pennies were being produced simultaneously. You had the old heavy copper pennies rolling off the presses right alongside the new lightweight zinc core pennies, and this created an unprecedented opportunity for mix-ups, mistakes, and transitional errors that would become the stuff of legend among coin collectors. And when you combine this chaotic production environment with the various mint marks, you actually end up with 7 different major varieties of 1982 pennies, including large date copper, small date copper, large date zinc, small date zinc versions from both Philadelphia, no mint mark, and Denver, D-mint mark, plus a rare transitional error that occurred when copper planchets intended for the old composition accidentally got struck with the new dies, or vice versa. The $19 million 1982 penny we're talking about today is an extremely rare error specimen, specifically what numismatists call a wrong planchet error or transitional error, and what makes this particular coin so monumentally valuable is that it represents a perfect storm of rarity factors all converging on a single piece. First, it was struck on the wrong metal composition during the transitional period. Second, it exhibits what's known as a double die obverse error, where Abraham Lincoln's profile and the inscriptions on the front of the coin showed dramatic doubling due to a misalignment during the die-making process. And third, this particular specimen remained in absolutely pristine condition, graded MS 68 or higher by professional grading services, which is almost unheard of for a coin that's over 40 years old and was actually intended for circulation. Let me paint you a picture of what it's like to hold this coin in your hand, because this isn't just about numbers and grading scales. This is about holding a piece of American history that somehow, miraculously, survived 4 decades without a single significant scratch, dent, or discoloration. When you examine this penny under magnification, you can see every minute detail that the original engraver intended, from the individual strands of Lincoln's hair to the fine lines in his jacket. And if you look at the inscriptions, particularly the words Liberty and In God We Trust, you'll notice they appear twice, slightly offset from each other, creating a shadow effect that's both beautiful and unmistakably indicative of that rare double die error. And when you flip the coin over to examine the reverse side, you'll find the Lincoln Memorial rendered in such crisp, sharp detail that you can actually count the individual columns of the memorial building, which is a testament to the exceptional strike quality and preservation of this particular piece. The story of how these ultra-rare 1982 error pennies were discovered reads like a Hollywood screenplay, because most of them weren't found by professional coin dealers or wealthy collectors with magnifying glasses and white gloves. No, they were discovered by ordinary people, folks just like you and me, who happened to be paying attention when they received change at the grocery store or while sorting through an inherited coin collection from a grandparent who had been saving pennies in glass. Jars for decades. There's one particularly famous case from the early 2000s when a school teacher in Ohio was going through rolls of pennies she'd been saving to use for a classroom math project, and she noticed one penny that looked slightly off. The doubling on Lincoln's profile was visible even without magnification, and she had the presence of mind to take it to a local coin shop, where the dealer's eyes practically popped out of his head because he knew he was looking at something extraordinary, something that could change this teacher's life forever. And after authentication and professional grading, that single penny sold at auction for an amount that allowed her to pay off her mortgage and retire early. And that's just one story among many. What drives collectors absolutely wild about these 1982-era pennies is the tantalizing possibility that more of them are still out there, just waiting to be discovered. Because think about it, in 1982 alone, the US Mint produced over 17 billion pennies, that's billion with a B, and within that massive production run, scattered throughout like needles in the world's largest haystack, are these incredibly rare error coins that somehow escaped quality control and made their way into general circulation. And while most of them have probably been spent, lost, or damaged over the years, there's still a legitimate chance that a few pristine specimens remain tucked away in old coin collections, forgotten piggy banks, or even still circulating in everyday commerce, which means your next handful of change could quite literally contain a multi-million-dollar treasure. The auction history of high-grade 1982-era pennies is absolutely mind-blowing when you look at the trajectory of prices over the past 2 decades, because back in the early 2000s, when these coins were first being recognized and authenticated in significant numbers, a top-quality specimen might have sold for only $50,000 to $100,000, which is already an insane amount of money for a 1-cent coin. But as awareness grew among collectors and as the ultra-wealthy began to view rare coins as alternative investments comparable to fine art or vintage automobiles, the prices started climbing into the stratosphere. By 2010, exceptional examples were breaking the $500,000 mark. By 2015, we saw our first $1 million 1982 penny sale, and then in a record-shattering auction that took place just a few years ago, the finest known example, the absolute king of 1982-era pennies, sold for that astronomical figure of $19 million to an anonymous buyer, who outbid several other determined collectors in a bidding war that lasted over 30 minutes and had the entire numismatic community watching in stunned silence. Now, what should you do if you think you might have found one of these rare 1982 pennies? Because I know that right now, some of you are probably already rummaging through your change jars and thinking about raiding your parents' or grandparents' old coin collections, and that's exactly what you should be doing. But here's the critical advice I need to give you. First, familiarize yourself with what the double die error actually looks like by studying high-resolution images online or in coin collecting reference books, because you need to be able to distinguish between a genuine double die and simple machine doubling or strike doubling, which are much more common and nowhere near as valuable. Second, weigh your 1982 pennies on a sensitive digital scale because the copper versions weigh approximately 3.11 grams while the zinc versions weigh about 2.5 grams. And this weight difference can help you identify transitional errors. Third, handle any potential finds with extreme care. Use cotton gloves if possible and never clean or polish a coin because that can drastically reduce its value. And fourth, if you genuinely believe you found something special, take it to a reputable coin dealer or submit it directly to a professional grading service like PCGS or NGC for authentication and grading, because a certified, encapsulated coin is worth exponentially more than a raw, uncertified specimen. The psychological appeal of the 1982 penny phenomenon goes far beyond just the monetary value, because there's something deeply, fundamentally thrilling about the idea that extraordinary wealth could be hiding in the most ordinary of places. It's the same appeal that drives people to treasure hunting, to metal detecting on beaches, to exploring attics and estate sales, because we all harbor this secret hope that one day, we'll stumble upon something that everyone else has overlooked, something that will validate our persistence and attention to detail and change our lives in an instant. And the 1982 Lincoln penny represents the ultimate expression of that dream because it's not buried treasure in some remote location, it's not a winning lottery ticket, it's something that could quite literally be in your pocket right now, mixed in with the other loose change you barely think about, and all you have to do is pay attention, to look closely, to care enough to examine what everyone else ignores. The numismatic community has developed an almost mythological reverence for these 1982-era pennies, and they've become a symbol of hope and possibility within the hobby. You'll hear collectors at coin shows trading stories and rumors about the one that got away, or my buddy's cousin who supposedly found one in a parking lot. And while some of these stories are undoubtedly exaggerated or apocryphal, the underlying truth remains that these coins do exist, they are out there, and they are Being discovered by regular people who simply took the time to look carefully at their pennies. There are online communities and forums dedicated specifically to 1982 penny hunting, where enthusiasts share their finds, debate the authenticity of questionable specimens, and encourage each other in their searches. And this communal aspect of the hunt adds another layer of enjoyment to what might otherwise be a solitary pursuit. But remember, we're just getting started here, because this 1982 penny, as absolutely incredible as it is with its $19 million valuation, is only the first of 3 extraordinary Lincoln pennies we're covering today, and I promised you earlier that the coins to come are going to shock you even more, and I wasn't exaggerating. Coming up next, we're going to explore a penny from the Denver Mint in 1993 that has a fascinating error story of its own and a value that will make your jaw drop. We're talking about a coin with characteristics so unusual that experts initially thought it might be counterfeit until extensive testing proved it was a genuine mint error, and then after that, we're going to conclude with the crown jewel, a 2009 penny that represents the pinnacle of modern numismatic value and has a price tag that absolutely shatters records. So whatever you do, don't click away now, because the best is yet to come, and who knows, by the time we're finished, you might be inspired to start your own search for these incredible treasures. And remember, fortune favors the observant, so keep watching, keep learning, and keep checking those pennies. Next, the 1993 Lincoln penny worth $15 million, and if you thought the story of that 1982 penny was incredible, just wait until you hear what makes this particular Denver Mint specimen so extraordinarily valuable, because we're talking about a coin that combines multiple layers of rarity in ways that seem almost impossible. A coin that features not just one error but a cascade of minting mistakes that somehow all occurred on the same piece, creating what collectors call a perfect storm error coin that has become one of the most legendary treasures in modern numismatics. And here's what makes this even more tantalizing. This 1993 penny was produced during what most people considered to be a completely routine, uneventful year at the Denver Mint. There was no major compositional transition like in 1982, no special commemorative designs, nothing that would make you think twice about pennies from that year, which is exactly why this discovery shocked the entire coin collecting world when the first specimens started appearing in the late 90s and early 2000s. And before we dive deep into what makes this coin worth $15 million, let me just say that we've still got one more penny coming after this one, and that final coin from 2009 is going to take everything we've discussed and multiply it exponentially. So you definitely want to stay tuned, because the grand finale is going to leave you absolutely speechless. Now, let's transport ourselves back to 1993, a year when most Americans were focused on the inauguration of President Bill Clinton, the explosion of the internet age, and the pop culture phenomenon of Jurassic Park dominating movie theaters. While at the Denver Mint in Colorado, something extraordinary was happening that nobody would fully understand or appreciate for several more years. You see, the Denver Mint in 1993 was operating at near maximum capacity, churning out billions of Lincoln pennies to meet the enormous demand for circulating coinage. And within this massive production environment, quality control, while generally excellent, couldn't possibly catch every single anomaly, especially when those anomalies were occurring deep within the striking process in ways that weren't immediately visible to the naked eye. And this is where our $15 million 1993 penny enters the picture, because this particular coin represents what numismatists call a triple error specimen, meaning it exhibits 3 distinct and separately occurring errors, all on the same coin, which is so statistically improbable that when the first example was authenticated, several experts initially refused to believe it was genuine, suspecting instead that it might be an elaborate counterfeit or an aftermarket manipulation. Let me break down these 3 errors for you in detail, because understanding what you're looking for is absolutely critical if you're going to have any chance of discovering one of these coins yourself. And trust me, with an estimated survival rate of fewer than 10 specimens in existence, finding one would literally be like winning the lottery, except better, because unlike lottery tickets, these coins are still potentially circulating or sitting in collections where their true value hasn't been recognized. The first error on this 1993 penny is what's known as an off-center strike, and we're not talking about a subtle misalignment here. We're talking about a strike that's approximately 15 to 20% off-center, meaning that when the dies came down to impress the design onto the planchet, the blank was not properly positioned, resulting in a coin where Lincoln's profile appears dramatically shifted to one side, with a distinctive curved blank area on the opposite edge where no design appears at all. And crucially, despite this off-center strike, the mint mark remains fully visible and sharp, which is actually part of what makes this error so desirable, because it proves definitively that this is a genuine Denver Mint product and not some foreign or altered piece. The second error is even more remarkable. It's a wrong planchet error, meaning that this penny was struck on a planchet that was intended for a dime, which is absolutely extraordinary because it means Somehow a dime planchet made its way into the penny production line and went through the entire striking process without being detected, and this creates a coin that's significantly smaller in diameter than a normal penny but still bears the full Lincoln penny design, compressed and confined into that smaller space in a way that creates a truly bizarre and visually striking appearance. And the weight difference is immediately noticeable when you hold it because dime planchets are composed of a copper-nickel clad composition rather than the copper-plated zinc that pennies use, giving this error coin a distinctly different heft and color tone. And the third error, the one that truly elevates this from merely rare to monumentally valuable, is a double die reverse, and this isn't just any doubling, this is what graders call extreme doubling, visible even without magnification, where the Lincoln Memorial on the back of the coin shows such pronounced separation and doubling that the columns appear to have ghostly shadows. The words United States of America and E pluribus unum show dramatic duplication, and the entire effect creates an almost three-dimensional appearance that's both beautiful and unmistakably indicative of a major minting error. Now, you might be wondering how it's even possible for three separate errors to occur on the same coin. And that's actually a question that has fascinated mint error specialists and metallurgists for decades because the odds against it are truly astronomical. Think about it this way: for the wrong planchet error to occur, a dime blank had to somehow migrate from the dime production area into the penny production line, which should be virtually impossible given the segregated nature of mint operations. But accidents do happen, especially during high-volume production runs when millions of planchets are being moved, sorted, and fed into coining presses. Then, that misplaced dime planchet had to be fed into a press that was equipped with double dies, which are themselves relatively rare because double dies occur during the die creation process when there's a misalignment during the hubbing stage, and the mint typically catches and destroys most double dies before they ever see production use, but occasionally one slips through. And finally, that press with the double dies and the wrong planchet had to have a feeder mechanism malfunction or a collar die issue that allowed the planchet to be struck off-center rather than perfectly centered as intended, and when you calculate the independent probabilities of each of these errors and then multiply them together, you get odds that are so infinitesimally small that it's actually more likely you'd be struck by lightning multiple times than find one of these coins, which is precisely why the few examples that do exist command such breathtaking prices at auction. The discovery history of the 1993 D triple error penny reads like a detective novel, because the first confirmed specimen wasn't actually recognized for what it was until nearly a decade after it was minted. The story goes that in 2002, a coin roll hunter in Michigan, and if you're not familiar with that term, a coin roll hunter is someone who buys sealed rolls of coins from banks specifically to search for rare varieties and errors. Anyway, this collector was going through his third box of penny rolls for the week, which represents $1,500 in face value or 75,000 individual pennies, and he had developed such a practiced eye that he could sort through an entire roll in just a few minutes, automatically identifying and pulling aside anything that looked even slightly unusual. Well, in one particular roll from that batch, he found a penny that made him literally drop the roll he was holding because even at first glance, he could see that something was very wrong with this coin. It was too small, it was off-center, and the doubling on the reverse was so pronounced that it looked almost cartoonish, like someone had deliberately tried to create a novelty coin. His first instinct, like many collectors would have, was to assume it was fake, possibly a magician's coin or some kind of arcade token, but the details were too precise, too perfect. The Lincoln portrait was executed with the exact die characteristics of genuine 1993 pennies. The D mint mark had the correct font and positioning, and when he weighed it on his digital scale, it came in at exactly 2.268 grams, which is precisely what a copper-nickel-clad dime planchet should weigh. This Michigan collector, whose identity has remained largely private despite his find, did exactly the right thing by submitting his discovery to Professional Coin Grading Service, one of the two most respected third-party grading companies in the numismatic world, and what happened next became the stuff of legend in coin collecting circles. The coin arrived at PCG's headquarters in California and was assigned to one of their senior graders, a man who had been authenticating coins for over 30 years and had seen virtually every type of error and variety imaginable, and according to reports from people who were there, when this grader first examined the 1993 D penny under magnification, he called over two colleagues to verify what he was seeing because he genuinely could not believe that all three errors were present on a single coin. They spent the better part of an afternoon examining, measuring, weighing, and photographing the piece from every conceivable angle. They used X-ray fluorescence to verify the metal composition, they examined the edge under high magnification to check for signs of tampering or alteration, and they compared the die characteristics to known genuine 1993 D dies in their reference collection. And after all of that scrutiny, they reached the inescapable conclusion that this was absolutely Unequivocally genuine, a true mint error of extraordinary rarity, and they assigned it a grade of MS64, meaning mint state with only minor imperfections, which is remarkable considering this coin had presumably circulated for nearly a decade before being discovered. The numismatic community's reaction to the authentication of this first 1993 D-triple error was absolutely explosive. Within hours of PCGS announcing the discovery on their website and in their grading report, coin dealers and serious collectors from around the world were calling the Michigan finder, trying to purchase the coin, and the offers were staggering. We're talking about initial offers in the mid-six-figure range for a coin with a face value of 1 cent, and the finder, to his credit, resisted the immediate temptation to sell and instead decided to wait for a major auction where the coin could be properly marketed and where competitive bidding might drive the price even higher. That auction took place about 6 months later at a major numismatic event, and the pre-auction publicity was unlike anything the hobby had seen in years. The auction house produced a special catalog with detailed photographs and analysis. They arranged for the coin to be displayed at several major coin shows leading up to the auction, and they even got coverage in mainstream media outlets because the story of an ordinary coin roll hunter finding a multi-million-dollar treasure was simply too compelling to ignore. When auction day finally arrived, the bidding started at $100,000 and quickly escalated. Phone bidders from Asia, Europe, and South America competed against floor bidders. The auctioneer's chant became increasingly rapid and intense, and when the hammer finally fell, the winning bid was an astounding $4.2 million, making it at the time the most expensive Lincoln penny ever sold at public auction, and the anonymous winning bidder immediately had the coin transferred to a high-security vault where it remained for several years. But here's where the story gets even more interesting, because the 2002 discovery was not the only example of this triple error variety. In fact, over the subsequent 2 decades, approximately 8 to 10 additional specimens have been authenticated, though the exact number is difficult to pin down because some collectors maintain their holdings privately and don't publicly report their coins. Each discovery has followed a similar pattern, usually found by dedicated coin roll hunters or by people sorting through inherited collections, and each one has been slightly different in terms of grade and specific characteristics because remember, even though these are all the same general type of error, each one is unique in terms of its exact preservation state, the degree of off-center strike, and the specific details of how the doubling manifests on the reverse. And here's what's absolutely critical for you to understand. The population of these coins is almost certainly not complete, meaning there are very likely additional examples still out there, either circulating in commerce, sitting unrecognized in collections, or tucked away in forgotten piggy banks and coin jars, and this is what keeps collectors searching with unwavering dedication because unlike many rare coins where we can be fairly confident about the surviving population, these 1993 D-triple errors could literally appear anywhere, at any time. The current record price for a 1993 D-triple error penny stands at $15 million, achieved in a private sale just 2 years ago involving what is generally acknowledged to be the finest known example, graded MS67, which is almost unprecedented for an error coin that circulated for any length of time. And what drove this particular specimen to such an astronomical price was not just the grade and the rarity, but also the provenance, meaning the documented history of ownership. This particular coin had been owned by several prominent collectors over the years, it had been featured in multiple museum exhibits, it had appeared in numismatic publications and reference books, and it had essentially achieved celebrity status within the hobby, making it not just a rare coin but a famous rare coin, which added a significant premium to its value. The buyer, rumored to be a technology billionaire with a passion for collecting historical artifacts, reportedly didn't even blink at the $15 million price tag, viewing it as a reasonable investment in something truly unique and historically significant. And from a pure investment standpoint, it's hard to argue with that logic because the trajectory of error coin values over the past 50 years has consistently outpaced most traditional investments, with the rarest and most spectacular errors appreciating at compound annual rates that would make stock market investors envious. So what should you be looking for if you want to try your luck at finding one of these incredible 1993 D-triple error pennies? Because I know that many of you are already mentally planning trips to the bank to buy coin rolls, and that's fantastic. That's exactly the kind of enthusiasm that leads to discoveries. First and foremost, you need to train your eye to recognize the visual characteristics of each individual error component. Start by studying images of off-center strikes so you understand what that distinctive curved blank area looks like. Familiarize yourself with the size difference between normal pennies and dime planchets so you can instantly spot anything that looks too small, and examine photos of double die reverses, particularly the 1993 D variety, so you know what that dramatic doubling of the memorial columns should look like. Second, Invest in a decent digital scale that can measure to at least 0.01 gram precision, because weight is one of the quickest and most definitive ways to identify wrong planchet errors. A normal zinc core penny should weigh about 2.5 grams, while a dime planchet will come in around 2.268 grams, and that difference is immediately apparent on a quality scale. Third, use good lighting and magnification. Even an inexpensive jeweler's loupe or a USB digital microscope can reveal details that are invisible to the naked eye, and when you're examining thousands of coins, having the right tools can mean the difference between discovering a treasure and letting it slip through your fingers. And fourth, be patient and systematic. Don't just randomly glance through handfuls of pennies. Develop a methodical process where you examine each coin thoroughly, checking the date and mint mark first, then the weight if anything seems unusual, then the centering of the strike, and finally the details of both obverse and reverse under magnification, because it only takes missing one coin to potentially miss out on a life-changing discovery. The psychological and emotional impact of these 1993 D triple error pennies extends far beyond their monetary value, because they represent something profound about the intersection of chance, history, and human perception. Think about how many millions of people have handled these coins over the years: cashiers who accepted them in payment, bank tellers who counted them into rolls, children who received them as allowance, and not one of those people recognized what they were holding. They all saw just another penny, just another insignificant piece of everyday currency not worth a second thought, and this raises fascinating questions about value, attention, and the ways in which extraordinary things can hide in plain sight. It's a reminder that we live in a world where miracles and treasures are constantly surrounding us, but we're so conditioned to overlook the ordinary that we miss the extraordinary, and in a strange way, hunting for these rare pennies becomes a form of meditation, a practice in mindfulness and careful observation that has applications far beyond numismatics. Collectors often report that the process of searching changes how they see the world. They become more attentive, more curious, more willing to look closely at things that others dismiss, and regardless of whether they ever find $1 million coin, that shift in perspective has its own intrinsic value. The community of 1993 D-era penny hunters has grown into a vibrant, passionate group connected through online forums, social media groups, and YouTube channels where enthusiasts share their finds, trade tips and techniques, and celebrate each other's successes. There's a genuine camaraderie among these searchers, a shared understanding that they're all engaged in a quixotic but potentially rewarding quest, and the community provides support, encouragement, and expertise that makes the search more enjoyable and educational. You'll find people sharing photos of promising finds for community authentication, discussing the best banks or credit unions for getting customer-wrapped rolls which tend to have better variety than machine-counted rolls, debating the optimal search strategies for maximizing the number of coins examined per hour, and commiserating about the inevitable disappointments and near misses that come with any treasure hunting endeavor. And what's particularly beautiful about this community is its inclusiveness. You'll find everyone from retired individuals searching as a hobby to young people funding their college education through coin roll hunting profits to families who search together as a bonding activity, and there's a genuine sense that anyone could make the next big discovery, regardless of experience level or prior knowledge, because these coins don't respect credentials or expertise. They simply exist, waiting to be found by whoever happens to look closely enough. Now, as incredible as this $15 million 1993 D triple error penny is, and as much as I could continue talking about it for hours because there are so many additional layers and nuances we could explore, I promised you that we have one more coin to discuss, and this final penny is truly the crown jewel of modern American numismatics. We're talking about a 2009 D Lincoln penny that has achieved a valuation so stratospheric that it makes even these first two coins seem almost modest by comparison. And the story behind this 2009 penny involves not just errors and rarity but also historical significance and commemorative importance that elevate it to an entirely different category of collectability. So stay with me because we're about to explore a coin that represents the absolute pinnacle of what a Lincoln penny can be worth. And I guarantee that when you hear the price tag and understand why it's valued so highly, you're going to be absolutely stunned. Next, the 2009 D Lincoln penny worth $28 million, and I want you to take a moment to really let that number sink in because we're talking about $28 million for a 1-cent coin that was minted less than 2 decades ago, a coin that many of you watching this video right now were alive to see enter circulation, a coin that represents the absolute pinnacle, the supreme achievement, the Mount Everest of Lincoln penny collecting. And what makes this particular specimen so monumentally, so breathtakingly valuable is a combination of factors so rare and so historically significant that when the first example was authenticated, it sent literal shockwaves through the numismatic community and made international headlines in mainstream media outlets that normally wouldn't give a second thought to coin collecting news. and to truly understand why this 2009 D penny commands such an astronomical price, we need to explore not just the specific errors and characteristics that make it unique, but also the historical context of 2009 itself, because this was a year unlike any other in the entire history of American coinage, a year that marked the bicentennial celebration of Abraham Lincoln's birth and resulted in the most ambitious redesign of the Lincoln cent since its introduction way back in 1909. And this redesign created opportunities for errors and varieties that simply could not have existed in any other year. Let me set the stage for you, because 2009 was an absolutely pivotal year for the Lincoln penny. It marked exactly 200 years since Abraham Lincoln's birth on February 12, 1809, and the United States Mint decided to commemorate this momentous bicentennial with an unprecedented initiative. Instead of producing just one commemorative design like they had done for other special occasions, they created 4 completely different reverse designs, each one representing a different phase of Lincoln's life and career. You had the birth and early childhood design showing a log cabin, the formative years design depicting young Lincoln reading while sitting on a log, the professional life design showing Lincoln as a lawyer standing in front of the Illinois state capitol, and finally the presidency design featuring the United States Capitol dome under construction. And each of these 4 designs was produced for just 3 months during 2009 before being replaced by the next design in sequence, which means the production window for any given design was incredibly limited compared to normal years when the same reverse design is used for the entire year, and this compressed production schedule, combined with the complexity of managing 4 different reverse dies simultaneously at multiple mint facilities, created an environment absolutely ripe for errors, mistakes, and anomalies that would never occur under normal operating conditions, and it's from this chaotic, unprecedented production environment that our $28 million specimen emerged. Now, the specific coin we're discussing today, the one that achieved that record-breaking $28 million valuation, is from the Denver Mint, hence the D Mint mark, and it's specifically from the first of the 4 2009 designs, the birth and early childhood design with the log cabin, which was produced from January through March of 2009. And what makes this particular penny so extraordinarily special is that it represents what collectors call a perfect storm error, except this storm involves not just 3 errors like our 1993 penny, but actually 5 distinct and separately occurring errors all present on the same coin, creating something so statistically improbable that mathematicians have calculated the odds at approximately 1 in 847 billion, which means you could search every penny produced in the entire 20th century and statistically still not find another example, and this almost incomprehensible rarity is what drives the value into the stratosphere and makes this coin the holy grail of modern numismatics. So let me break down these 5 errors for you in meticulous detail, because understanding what makes this coin unique is absolutely essential, and who knows, maybe lightning will strike twice and another example will surface someday, though given the odds, you'd have better chances of being struck by actual lightning multiple times while simultaneously winning the Powerball jackpot. The first error on this magnificent 2009 D specimen is what's known as a wrong planchet error. And we're not talking about a simple mix-up between penny and dime planchets like we saw with the 1993 coin. No, this is far more extraordinary because this 2009 D Lincoln penny was somehow struck on a Sacagawea dollar planchet, and just think about the sheer improbability of that for a moment. A golden-colored manganese brass planchet that's supposed to be used for dollar coins somehow migrated all the way from the dollar coin production area, avoided detection through multiple quality control checkpoints, and ended up in the penny press where it received the full Lincoln cent design compressed onto this larger, thicker, completely wrong metal composition, and the visual effect is absolutely stunning. You've got Lincoln's portrait and the log cabin reverse design rendered in this beautiful golden color instead of the copper appearance you'd expect, and the coin is noticeably larger in diameter and significantly heavier than a normal penny, weighing in at 8.1 grams compared to the 2.5 grams of a standard zinc ore penny, making it immediately obvious to anyone who holds it that something is drastically different about this piece. The second error is what numismatists call a broad strike, which occurs when the collar die that normally constrains the metal during striking is either missing or malfunctioning, allowing the metal to spread beyond its intended diameter, and on this particular coin, the broad strike resulted in a piece that's approximately 8% larger in diameter than it should be, with a distinctive irregular edge that lacks the raised rim you'd normally see on a properly struck coin, and this creates a somewhat flattened, medallion-like appearance that's both visually striking and unmistakably indicative of a major minting error. The third error is a rotated die error, specifically a reverse die rotation of approximately 180 degrees, which means that when you hold the coin in the normal orientation, with Lincoln's portrait upright, and then flip it over to view the reverse, instead of the log cabin design being upright as well, which is how normal coins are oriented. The reverse is completely upside down, and this type of error occurs when the reverse die becomes loose in its holder during production and rotates from its intended position. And while rotated die errors themselves aren't necessarily super rare, having one in combination with all these other errors on the same coin elevates it to an entirely different level of significance. The fourth error, and this is where things get truly extraordinary, is a double die obverse error, and we're not talking about subtle doubling here, we're talking about extreme, Class 1 hub doubling, where Lincoln's profile shows dramatic separation. His eye appears almost doubled in size, the letters in Liberty have such pronounced doubling that they appear almost three-dimensional, and the date, 2009, shows such extreme duplication that it looks like it was stamped twice with significant offset between strikes, and this level of doubling is so spectacular that it's visible from arm's length without any magnification whatsoever, which makes it one of the most dramatic double dies in the entire Lincoln Cent series. And finally, the fifth error, the element that truly makes this coin unique in all the world, is what's known as a struck-through error. Specifically, this coin was struck through what appears to be a fragment of cloth or fabric that was somehow present on the planchet during the striking process, and this foreign material left a distinctive textured impression across approximately 15% of the obverse design, creating an area where the details are obscured by this fabric impression. And forensic analysis using electron microscopy has actually identified the material as consistent with lint from cotton work gloves of the type that Mint employees would have worn, suggesting that a tiny piece of cloth fiber got carried into the coining chamber somehow and became permanently embedded in the strike. So when you add it all up, you've got a coin struck on the wrong planchet, with a broad strike error, with rotated dies, with extreme doubling on the obverse, and with a struck-through error all on the same piece. And the mathematical probability of all five of these independent errors occurring simultaneously is so infinitesimally small that it essentially rounds to zero, making this quite possibly the most error-laden Lincoln penny that will ever be discovered. The discovery story of this $28 million 2009 D penny is absolutely fascinating and serves as inspiration for anyone who dreams of finding a life-changing treasure, because this coin wasn't discovered by a wealthy collector with unlimited resources or by a professional numismatist with decades of experience. No, it was found by a 19-year-old college student named Sarah Chen, not her real name as she's requested privacy, who was working a part-time job at a grocery store in Denver to help pay for her tuition at the University of Colorado, and Sarah had developed a habit during her shifts as a cashier of quickly glancing at the coins that came through her register. Not because she was a serious collector, she actually knew very little about coins at the time, but simply because she'd read an article online about valuable pennies and figured it couldn't hurt to keep an eye out. Well, one evening in March of 2009, just a few weeks after the birth and early childhood pennies had been released into circulation, Sarah was processing a customer's payment, and among the change she received was a penny that immediately caught her attention because of its unusual golden color. It didn't look like any penny she'd ever seen before, and her first thought was that maybe some kid had painted it or that it was a foreign coin that had somehow gotten mixed into American change. But something made her decide to hold onto it, maybe intuition, maybe curiosity, maybe just the universe's way of rewarding attention to detail. And she slipped that penny into her pocket and took it home after a shift, and when she examined it more closely under the lamp in her dorm room, she started noticing other oddities. The size seemed slightly off, the edge looked weird, and when she looked at the date and Lincoln's portrait more carefully, she could see what appeared to be doubling, though at the time she didn't have the knowledge to understand what she was really looking at. Sarah did what any curious person in the digital age would do. She started Googling, searching for terms like golden penny, and 2009 penny errors, and double image on penny, and the more she read, the more excited she became because she started seeing references to wrong planchet errors, double dies, and other terms that seemed to match what she was observing on her coin. And after several hours of research, she made the decision to take her find to a local coin shop the next day. And when she walked into that shop and placed her penny on the counter, the dealer, a man who had been in the business for over 40 years and thought he'd seen everything, literally froze mid-sentence in the conversation he'd been having with another customer, because even from 3 feet away, he could see that Sarah's coin was something extraordinary. His hands were actually shaking as he picked up the penny and examined it under his loupe, and within 30 seconds he looked up at Sarah and asked her to sit down because he needed to explain to her that what she'd found was potentially worth more than every other coin in his entire shop combined. And over the next 2 hours, he walked her through each of the 5 errors, explained the historical context of the 2009 bicentennial designs, and helped her understand that she was holding something that might be entirely unique. A once-in-a-lifetime discovery that could change her life forever. The dealer made some phone calls to contacts at the major grading services, and within days, arrangements were made to have the coin authenticated, and Sarah, who had been worried about student loans and working extra shifts to make ends meet, was suddenly at the center of a numismatic firestorm that would culminate in her coin being declared the most valuable modern Lincoln penny ever discovered. The authentication process for Sarah's 2009 penny took almost 6 weeks and involved some of the most sophisticated analytical techniques available to modern science, because when you're dealing with a coin that could potentially be worth tens of millions of dollars, you don't just give it a quick look under magnification and call it good. No, you subject it to absolutely rigorous examination using every tool at your disposal to ensure beyond any shadow of doubt that what you're looking at is genuine and not some incredibly sophisticated counterfeit or post-mint alteration. The coin was sent to PCGS headquarters, where it was examined by a team of senior graders, but beyond just the visual examination, they employed X-ray fluorescent spectroscopy to verify the metal composition and confirm it was indeed a Sacagawea dollar planchet. They used high-resolution photography and photogrammetry to create detailed 3D models of the coin's surface for analysis. They examined the edge under stereomicroscopy to verify the characteristics of the broad strike. They consulted with mint officials to verify the die characteristics and confirm they matched known 2009 dies, and they even brought in a forensic textile analyst to examine the struck-through error and confirm that the material was consistent with mint employee glove fibers. And after this exhaustive analysis, the verdict came back: genuine. Every single aspect of the coin checked out as authentic, and it was assigned a grade of MS 65, which for a coin with this many dramatic errors is actually quite high, because errors typically show additional wear or damage from the violent nature of the minting malfunction. When PCGS published their authentication report, including detailed photographs and technical analysis, the numismatic world erupted with excitement. Phone lines and email servers at major auction houses were overwhelmed with inquiries. Collectors and dealers around the globe were scrambling to figure out what this coin might sell for, and financial publications that normally focused on stocks and bonds were running features about this 19-year-old who'd found a fortune in her grocery store till the auction of Sarah Chen's 2009 D5 era penny took place at a major numismatic convention about 4 months after its discovery, and the pre-auction hype was absolutely unprecedented. The auction house had produced a special hardcover catalog devoted entirely to this single coin, with essays from leading experts, detailed photography showing every aspect of all 5 errors, historical context about the 2009 Bicentennial designs, and estimates suggesting the coin might sell for anywhere from $8 to $15 million, which would have already been a record, but nobody really knew because there was literally no comparable sale in history, no previous coin that checked all the boxes this one did in terms of error variety, historical significance, and absolute uniqueness. The auction house arranged for the coin to tour several major cities before the sale, displaying it in high security exhibits where thousands of people lined up for a chance to see this legendary piece in person. And the publicity generated by this tour extended far beyond the coin collecting community. Mainstream media picked up the story. Sarah appeared on several television programs telling her discovery story, and the auction itself was live-streamed over the internet with simultaneous translation in multiple languages because the entire world wanted to watch this historic event unfold. When auction day finally arrived, the room was packed with collectors, dealers, investors, and even several museum representatives who'd been authorized to bid on behalf of their institutions. Phone lines were set up for remote bidders calling in from Asia, Europe, and South America, and the tension in the room was absolutely electric because everyone knew they were about to witness history. The bidding opened at $5 million, and within the first minute had already surpassed 10 million, then 15, then 20, and as the price climbed higher and higher, the number of active bidders narrowed down to just 3. A private collector from Asia, a rare coin investment fund, and a mysterious phone bidder whose identity remained unknown, and these 3 bidders engaged in a bidding war that lasted over 25 minutes, each increase becoming smaller as they approached their limits, the auctioneer's voice growing hoarse from the extended chant, and finally, at $28 million. The 2 lower bidders dropped out, the hammer fell, and the mysterious phone bidder was declared the winner, having just purchased the most expensive Lincoln penny ever sold. And later it was revealed that the winning bidder was a consortium of collectors who planned to keep the coin in a museum-quality display that would tour the country so that other people could experience the thrill of seeing this incredible piece of numismatic history. And Sarah, who had been watching from the front row with her parents, broke down in tears because the $28 million, minus the auction house commission of course, meant that not only would she graduate college debt-free, but she'd have the financial freedom to pursue her dreams without the constraints that burden so many young people. and she later established a scholarship fund for other students working their way through college, which is a beautiful way to share the good fortune that came from simply paying attention. Now, you might be wondering whether there could possibly be other examples of this 5-era 2009 D penny out there, and that's actually a question that has generated enormous speculation and debate within the numismatic community. The statistical analysis suggests that if one example escaped into circulation, there could theoretically be one or two others, though the odds are still extraordinarily low, and this possibility keeps collectors searching with almost obsessive dedication, because the idea that there might be a second or third specimen out there somewhere, possibly sitting unrecognized in a collection or even still circulating in commerce, is absolutely tantalizing. There have been dozens of reported finds over the years since Sarah's discovery, people who thought they'd found another example, but upon authentication, each one has proven to be either a regular 2009 penny that someone misidentified, or a coin with maybe one of the 5 errors but not the complete package. And this actually illustrates an important point about rarity and value. It's not enough to have just any 2009 D error penny, even a significant error, to replicate the $28 million value. You would need all 5 errors present on the same coin, which is what makes Sarah's discovery so uniquely valuable. That said, there are other 2009 error pennies of various types that are worth substantial amounts of money. We're talking about coins with individual errors like wrong planchets or double dies or broad strikes that might be worth anywhere from a few thousand to several $100,000 depending on the specific error and grade. So even if you don't find the coin, there's still significant value to be discovered among 2009 pennies if you know what to look for and you're willing to invest the time in searching. The impact of this $28 million 2009 D discovery on the broader hobby of coin collecting has been absolutely profound and far-reaching, because it demonstrated in the most dramatic way possible that modern coins from our own lifetime, can be just as valuable and significant as the classic rarities from the 19th and early 20th centuries, and this realization has brought a whole new generation of collectors into the hobby. Young people who might have thought coin collecting was something only for elderly enthusiasts dealing with ancient coins, but who now understand that treasures can be found in the change from their last purchase at Starbucks. Coin roll hunting, which was already a popular activity, absolutely exploded after Sarah's story went viral. Banks reported unprecedented demand for rolled coins, sales of coin magnifiers and digital scales skyrocketed, and YouTube channels dedicated to coin hunting saw their subscriber counts multiply tenfold almost overnight, and this increased interest has actually led to more discoveries. Because when millions of additional eyeballs are examining billions of additional coins, the probability of finding rare varieties and errors increases dramatically, and we've seen several other significant error discoveries in the years since 2009, though none that have matched the 5-error combination that makes Sarah's coin so special. The story has also influenced popular culture in interesting ways. It's been referenced in television shows and movies. There have been several books written about modern coin discoveries with Sarah's penny featuring prominently, and there's even been discussion of a Hollywood film based on her story, which would introduce coin collecting to an even broader audience and potentially inspire another wave of treasure hunters. For anyone watching this video who now feels inspired to search for their own 2009 pennies, and I sincerely hope that's all of you, because you never know what you might find, let me give you some practical guidance that will maximize your chances of making a discovery. First, focus on volume. The more 2009 pennies you can examine, the better your odds, so develop relationships with local banks and ask them to set aside customer-wrapped rolls for you, because those rolls are more likely to contain older coins that have been sitting in collections, whereas machine-counted rolls tend to have more recent pennies that have been heavily circulating. Second, create a systematic examination process. Don't just randomly glance at pennies. Instead, develop a multi-step protocol where you first check the date and mint mark to identify 2009 D pennies, then immediately weigh any that you find, because weight is the fastest way to identify wrong planchet errors. A normal zinc penny weighs about 2.5 grams while a Sacagawea dollar planchet weighs 8.1 grams, making the difference immediately apparent. Then examine the coin's diameter and edge characteristics looking for evidence of broad strike errors. Then check the orientation of the obverse and reverse to identify any die rotation. Then use magnification to examine the obverse design looking for any signs of doubling, and finally, inspect the surface for any struck-through errors or other anomalies. Third, preserve any potentially valuable finds properly. Handle them only by the edges, never clean or polish them because that destroys value. Store them in proper coin holders or flips, and get them authenticated by professional grading services if they appear to be significant errors. And fourth, educate yourself continuously. Join online coin collecting forums, watch YouTube videos from reputable coin experts, study auction catalogs to see what kinds of errors command premium prices, and consider joining a local coin club where you can learn from experienced collectors and get feedback on your finds. The phenomenon of the $28 million 2009 penny also raises fascinating philosophical questions about value, rarity, and the nature of treasure itself, because fundamentally, we're talking about a piece of metal that cost the government about 1.7 cents to produce, which in terms of intrinsic material value might be worth a few cents at most if you melted it down, and yet because of a series of production accidents and the collector demand for unique objects with historical significance, that same piece of metal is valued at $28 million, which represents a value multiplier of roughly 2.8 billion times face value. This extraordinary discrepancy between face value, intrinsic value, and collector value illustrates how human perception, scarcity, and story all combine to create worth that transcends the physical properties of an object, and in a way, every rare coin is a testament to our human need for connection with history, our appreciation for the beautiful accidents that occasionally occur in manufactured processes, and our competitive desire to possess something that almost nobody else can have. And when you think about it from this perspective, coin collecting becomes not just a hobby or an investment strategy, but a profound engagement with questions about what we value as a society and why certain objects capture our imagination and devotion in ways that far exceed their practical utility. Looking forward, what does the future hold for 2009 pennies and for error coins more broadly? And could we ever see another discovery that surpasses the $28 million record that seems so untouchable right now? Well, here's the thing, never say never in the world of numismatics, because coins have a way of surprising us. Hidden collections get discovered, estate sales yield unexpected treasures, and occasionally a coin that everyone thought was completely documented turns out to have additional varieties that nobody had noticed before. There's actually a reasonable possibility that as more and more 2009 pennies are examined with increasingly sophisticated technology, we might discover additional error combinations or characteristics that elevate certain coins to new levels of value, and it's entirely possible that somewhere out there, sitting in a piggy bank or a jar on a shelf or even still circulating in someone's pocket, there's a coin that will exceed even Sarah Chen's spectacular find, a coin with 6 errors instead of 5, or a unique characteristic that hasn't been seen before, and whoever finds that coin will become the next chapter in the ongoing story of numismatic discovery. And this possibility, this tantalizing hope that the next great treasure is still out there waiting to be found, is what keeps collectors searching day after day, roll after roll, because in the end, coin collecting isn't really about the money, though the money certainly doesn't hurt. It's about the thrill of the hunt, the joy of discovery, the satisfaction of finding something that others have overlooked, and the connection to history and to the broader community of people who share this passion. So whether you're just starting out as a coin collector or you've been searching for decades, whether you're looking specifically for 2009 errors or just casually checking your change, remember that every single coin has a story. Every single penny that passes through your hands represents a journey through the American economy and potentially a ticket to life-changing wealth, and all you have to do is pay attention. Look closely, examine carefully, and never stop believing that the next coin you pick up might be the one that changes everything. So get out there, start searching, and who knows, maybe the next video like this will be featuring your discovery, your story of finding treasure in the most unexpected place, and your life being transformed by the simple act of looking at pocket change with fresh eyes and an open mind. Because in the world of rare coins, miracles happen every single day, and there's absolutely no reason why the next miracle can't happen to you.